Welcome back again to another one of Mrs. Kohler's Pencasts. Here's your smiley face to welcome you back, because I know that you are ever so happy to have to be watching something for school. So this is podcast number 2 of section 2. So don't forget that you have to watch this one and the one on prokaryotes and eukaryotes before you can take your quiz and also complete those activities. So we're going to talk about how plant cells and animal cells are similar and how they're different. Before we can talk about the differences though, we need to do a vocab term. Okay. So an organelle is a smaller structure that's inside of a cell, and it has a particular function. So an organelle for a cell is kind of like an organ for our body. Each organelle has a specific job that it does for the cell, and generally the cell can't function without it. So organelles are very important. So it has the word organ, like a human organ, but then the L means, little or young, like mademoiselle. So it's like a little organ. So in plant and animal cells, most of their organelles are going to be the same, but there are a couple of differences because plant and animal cells have to do different things. So first we're going to talk about the differences. Alright, so a plant cell has some special organelles that aren't generally found in an animal cell. And you're going to want to write these down because then we're going to zoom in. So a plant cell has a cell wall, which is this green area right here on the outside. And the cell wall is very thick, and it's always on the outside of the cell membrane. It also has chloroplasts, which are little green structures inside the cell. And it has a large central vacuole. Now, vacuoles are used for storage. So this is used, think about a potato. A potato has a ton of vacuoles because they all have starch stored inside of them. So animal cells sometimes have vacuoles, but almost all plant cells have a really big one somewhere in the center that they use for storing water and nutrients. The other thing to keep in mind about plant cells is their shape tends to be kind of like square or box-like. They usually look like either like stacked up bricks or squares. Now in animal cells, there's just a few organelles that tend to be special just for animal cells. And the first one is a flagellum. And there's not one on this cell, so I'm going to draw it. Maybe. Okay. So a flagellum is almost like a tail that comes out from the cell, and it kind of whips around and it helps the cell to move. So this would be a flagellum right here. And sometimes you also get these little tiny hair-like structures on the outside called cilia. They're also sometimes used for cell movement, and you're usually only going to find those in animal cells as well. The other structure that you usually only find in animal cells is called a centriole, and they're generally near the nucleus. And it usually looks like two little thick rods that are X'd over top of each other. They're not very big. They are used in cell division in animals. So flagellum and centriole tend to be the only two things that you usually only find in an animal cell, and as well as the little hairs, the cilia. One thing to notice about animal cells though is they can be just about any shape. Now when you're looking at a drawing of them, you're usually going to see something that looks kind of rounded or circular. But there's a ton of different shapes that animal cells can be depending on where they are in the body. So they're not constrained. Where plant cells usually have to be very box-like, animal cells can be just about any shape. Now, plant and animal cells have a lot of organelles that are in common. So you're probably just going to want to make a list of these. And in the next section, you'll find out a lot more about what they do. But you're probably just going to want to take some time and pause this and write down this list. So they all have a nucleus. They all have a nucleolus, which is inside the nucleus. They all have ribosomes. They both have mitochondria, rough and smooth ER, plasma membrane, which is the same as cell membrane. They both have lysosomes, peroxisomes, Golgi, and vesicles. So they have a lot more in common than they do that are different. But you know how people are, we like to sort things according to their differences. And don't forget to write a question you still have about plant and animal cells. Remember, you don't get credit unless you write the question.